Hello, Internet. I hope you're doing well. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. I'm Sam, your host for the day. With me, I have my good friend Rick. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you, Sam? Good morning.
Yeah, I'm not bad. Rick is inviting me into a complete multiverse of madness with reporting and Blazor and minimal APIs and Azure AD and report viewers. Like, is there anything else you can throw at this? Just
It
everything is all
is it
together.
is quite the continuum, Sam. I take my pre-show notes on post-its, full disclosure. I filled an entire post-it of just the base technology we're using.
Yeah, yeah. Which is, I mean, it's a reality, for a lot of enterprises where you're actually shipping apps that enable certain workflows. You need all of the pieces. You need authentication, you need authorization, you need reporting
Mhm.
for your end users. So let's put it all together. So Rick has been working on a super cool app and a very real world, use case, and he wants me to be the guinea pig to try things out first, right?
Absolutely. Since you are an international man of mystery, Sam, I thought this would be the perfect solution for you to
Oh,
demo.
why not? Why not? And Rick always comes up with the most fun things. I mean, it's, the demos. He's always doing the crazy. So I'm curious to see what he has up on his sleeve today. Hey, Napam. Uh, Not much is up. I'm just chilling at home. It's a week of just doing the regular stuff. So yeah, glad to be here. So I'm guessing Rick wants me to share my screen. So let's do that. Let's move some windows around. All right. And how can I show my desktop? There we go. All right. Cool. All right. Let's pull up a browser here. And Rick has given me a URL yesterday. And um, I'm going to pull this up, but also kind of, just level set with a few things. So the reporting solution that Rick is using is Telerik reporting, right? So
Correct.
Rick, tell me, high level, what is this that we're looking at? What is Telerik reporting?
Sure. So at the highest level, Telerik reporting is a software development kit that lets you add reporting features into any application structure, provided you have a .NET backend somewhere. The front end can be almost anything. In my case, I'm using Blazor WebAssembly. I'm
Hmm.
hosting that in a .NET Core backend. We'll get into that in a minute when I walk through the application. But the Telerik Reporting SDK is a distributed and decoupled collection of resources that allow you to add reporting to your application. The three pillars are report design, report rendering, and report viewing. And we're going to go through all three of them today. Um,
Sweet.
it supports everything through .NET 7, probably .NET 8,
Yep. I saw
and
some of the previews. Yeah.
yeah.
Very cool. And this is, just building up the report and delivering it. But when it comes to actually, hosting reports, like, are you actually using the report server today or no?
No, we are not using the report server. This is a fully custom application, self-contained and deployed to Azure App Service.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I also am a big fan of the report server because it's a turnkey solution. So if you, want to have this hosted on a cloud and do all types of automation about how you manage your reports, this might be the thing you look at. All right, so you did mention Blazor. So I'm going to go back to reporting and see what you're talking about here. So we're talking about the visualize part of it. We're talking about the Blazor, like the native Blazor report viewer.
So just on an application level, the application is a Blazor WebAssembly solution, which it would be able to be used by reporting in a couple of ways. We have an HTML5 report viewer, which is based purely in HTML5 and JavaScript. You could use that in a Blazor WebAssembly solution or any front end solution that supports JavaScript, which is pretty much everything.
Mhm.
We could also have that same report viewer wrapped in a Blazor Razor component, which you can drop into your page. And we have a third option for you at the buffet. You can use a native Blazor um, report viewer that uses our UI for Blazor library and all of its control design. So there's minimal JavaScript in that. It's all Blazor and all normal Blazor coding semantics. That one does require a license for our UI for Blazor control library, and it's actually shipped with that library because it is so tightly embedded with the Blazor components that it makes more sense to ship that discrete piece with our Blazor library than with the reporting library.
Okay, got it. So you have a Blazor app that you're going to walk us through, and then are you using any? You mentioned Azure for authentication, authorization type things.
Yeah, so here's the full continuum technologies we're using. It is a Blazor WebAssembly front end solution hosted in a ASP.NET Core server solution. So there's going to be three projects in one solution that we look at. That is being integrated with Azure Active Directory, or AAD, as I'll be calling it for brevity. Um, uh, Using the Progress tenant. So we'll be able to log in and authenticate using our well-known Progress credentials, very secure. Uh, it also brings in custom groups and roles, a custom app role factory. It's all done under .NET 7, and all of that is before we even tack on the Telerik reporting SDKs.
It's quite the stack. All right. So for folks who are new to this, like this is Blazor. That's what Rick is using, and you can do server side or WebAssembly, two ways in which you can run Blazor applications, and then the authentication, like you're saying, is through Azure AAD. So shall we switch to your app?
Absolutely. Let's give it a try.
Okay, so all that Rick has given me prior to jumping on this stream is this URL. So reporting identity demo, and looks like it's hosted on Azure. I see the default Blazor template, which is the hello world, and I see a little thing called the native report viewer, and I
Yes.
also see login and about. So should I just start clicking around?
Yeah, I'll walk you through. So
Okay.
the basic template here, and I'll show all my notes and provide all my resources. To get this basic template up and running, I followed the very detailed Microsoft guide on integrating a hosted Blazor application with Azure Active Directory. It's probably about 50 steps you have to go through in exact order and precision. Um, I'll but that results in this template application. And then I went
Is
ahead and I added some. Um, I can include the link for you,
Yeah, you
Sam.
can show me once you start sharing screen, but like I just did a
Okay,
search
perfect.
and this is where I landed. So
Yeah, I
I'm
think
guessing it's something like that.
it might be the same one. I have dark modes. Mine looks very different.
Yeah. Ooh,
um,
Microsoft Graph. Now you're
I
getting
am. I actually.
complicated.
Ooh, thank you. That's something I forgot. That's in my tech stack too. Microsoft Graph. Very
Of
important.
course.
Microsoft Graph version 4, because all of the code samples that Microsoft provides for you are specific to Graph version 4. The latest Graph, if you just install from NuGet, is Microsoft Graph version 5, and it is completely not compatible with the code samples that they give you. So, unless you're a Graph expert and you want to take the code sample for the custom AD role factory and
Hmm.
update it for Graph 5, be sure you install the latest Graph version 4. That's
Can
my
you
pro
can you
my pro tip
so
for the day.
I have not done much at all with Microsoft Graph. Can you tell us like high level what exactly is it? Is it just for Microsoft 365 data? Is it for like how are you using it?
Honestly, I have just barely dipped my toes into the continuum of what Microsoft Graph provides, and I believe it is effectively an API for managing your roles and permissions and all of the identity claim principles
Hmm.
through an API level.
Yeah.
So with Azure, you have the Azure portal has different levels of functionality depending on your subscriber level. The free level has very basic tooling, and in order to do a lot of the things that I've done today, which I did on easy mode, you would use the graph APIs in order to do things like set roles, change the assigned roles, and add users to applications. Now, because I'm lucky and Progress has an enterprise account with Microsoft or Azure, I was able to take advantage of the advanced portal and do a lot of the things using the GUI. But if I didn't have that, it would a lot of it would be done via the Graph API for things like setting roles for your application and giving um, users those roles and assigning users to specific groups.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's well said in a nutshell. But it sounds like it's an API stack that lets you traverse if you have a Microsoft, Active Directory or enterprise account that lets you traverse through your data sets and lets you do roles and permissions. Okay, so that's what you're using.
That's what I'm
Um,
using.
so
Yeah.
I'm here on your app. Should I try
Okay.
getting to the native report viewer?
Yes, let's try going to that page and see what happens.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
beautiful.
You're not
Uh,
logged in. So this
mhm.
entire view requires authentication. So because you're not logged in, you can't even resolve the view. So why don't you go
Okay,
ahead and smash that
log
login
in.
button there? And
Oh, I see. This is bringing up the usual Microsoft authentication account. I am going to do the progress one, which, oh, okay. Because I'm on a browser where I already use other apps from Microsoft, and I mean, other apps that are tied to my personal Microsoft account as well as my enterprise account. So it looks like I picked the one and it didn't ask for anything else because I'm already logged in. But
yep.
if you weren't, this will prompt you for a password and then go to the authenticator app of some type. So it does the two-factor authentication, but I'm already logged in this browser, so
Yeah, I
it
see, and it's
recognizes
getting
who
your
I am.
name, so your
Yeah,
identity is correct, and
yeah,
now you're authenticated,
yeah.
so you're an
Let's
authorized user, and you
let's
can
go
hit
back
that button.
to yeah.
Okay, so now
Um,
we can resolve the view. Now, the only thing this is checking is that you are logged in, so it's just that authorized
yeah.
property. So you now have access to the APIs. Had you tried to hack my front end and get directly to the API layer, you would have gotten an error, having
Mm,
not been logged in.
right.
But now you can see the views, and you are authorized for the APIs. But what we did is anybody can set up something like this. So I thought it'd be fun to add some user roles. So
Okay.
you can see there's a custom button there at the top. It's a little
I,
small
I'm
on my
I'm
screen. I'm
getting
hoping the users can see everything well.
I'm
Um,
getting excited. It says like top secret report. Are we talking about security details or agents? What are we talking
like
about?
I said, you are an international man of mystery. So
Uh-huh.
you can see that it authenticates your role as
Oh
secret
yeah,
agent man.
I'm in.
And
I'm
look
in.
at that. An international spy, you now have access to a report showing all of
Oh,
the location of the Spectra agents worldwide. So
I love it.
congratulations, Mr. Bond.
This is what Rick does. He brings the fun into the demos that we do. So look at that. I'm a Spectre agent, and he is pinpointing the location of other agents around the globe. I got Beijing, Caracas, Damascus, Istanbul, Moscow, Pyongyang, Tallahassee. You had to put something on Florida, right?
I'm not going to comment on that.
There's
I
a lot
mean,
going on in Florida. Yeah.
the report is the report.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if I would if I had the option of choosing where I'm deployed, I might have some choices that I don't want to take. Love it. So I'm looking at a report now which was clearly behind authentication one and then authorization as well. Like you actually gave me a role. Like I see that it's identifying me as a secret agent man, and that's
Yes.
how I get in and see it. So even if I could get into my Microsoft account and if I did not have that role, I would not be able to see this.
That is correct, and that string "secret agent man" is actually being directly found via a link expression coming from your claim principal, searching the
Mm,
claim library for a claim called app role, and getting that specific string. When we get
mm,
into the code, that's not how I'm doing the security, but that's just for for fun
yeah.
and sanity checking.
So, and just for my understanding, so when I log in with Azure AAD,
Mhm.
so like I go log in with Azure, and then does Azure turn around and give you a whole bunch of tokens to work with that include the security roles?
So in this version of Blazor, because keep in mind, Blazor WASM is at its core just a single page app. The
Yeah.
fact that I'm hosting it in ASP core is sort of beside the point. It gives me a service layer, which I wouldn't otherwise have. But the way that works is it's using a JWT token, and that is getting all of your authentication information, your name, and all of your claim principles. Out of the box, there's about um, 15 to 20 claims in there when you just do file new. Because I'm importing all of the roles using Graph, and I did not do that in a surgical way. I said just dump all of the roles into the claim token, and I'll deal with it on the front end. Uh, in production, you would probably not want to do that. Um, but it ends up with almost 80 claims in the identity claim principle on the front end. So I was able to search that for the correct one, which is actually you can have more than one role. But
Mm.
the way I designed the app, there's only one role that matters.
Wait, so
So
should I be concerned that you can now see my tokens?
the tokens are fully encrypted.
Okay.
All I
All right.
can do is the application. All the application is getting is the authenticated user. None of your secrets or credentials are in there.
All right.
And Microsoft has done a really good job making sure that I have access to the information I need as an app designer, but I cannot get anything that I should not be able to see,
Okay.
like
Good.
anything private about you
I I
from your
trust you.
profile.
Right.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and log off, Sam?
All right. I will log out.
Because I actually received a disturbing memo that you may have defected to
Uh-oh.
the other side. So if you've logged off, then your authority has been revoked. All
Oh
knowledge
no.
of your identity has been disavowed, and you can try and log back in
This is bad. This is
and
bad.
access the
Okay.
same report.
So you are looking at a backend where you can change roles.
I am. So I have this. I'm looking at the enterprise applications portal of the client application. There are two applications that are being hosted in Azure: the server and the client. Each one has its own application registration profile. I'm looking at the enterprise application settings for the client side. That would be the WebAssembly. And in there, I have the custom permissions that I've set up, and I have the authenticated users who have roles assigned. Now, anybody who has an identity could log in, but
Mhm.
without that
As
mapping
yeah,
of a role to that unique identity, the application would just authenticate you. Basically, you would see the view, but you wouldn't have a
yeah. I
role.
mean,
And
as I do now. So
Mhm.
let me try going back up to this, and yeah. Hey, I'm still
Oh,
secret agent, man. Maybe it's cached. Hey,
did you log out, or
I did log
oh,
out.
maybe it was cached. Let me
Yeah.
refresh on my side too.
I can close the browser and see if I make a difference. Hold on. See, on a Mac, I have become more careful because I am used to hitting like Command Q, which shuts down all Chrome instances. Now I'm a little bit
Oh
more
boy,
careful.
I
Yeah.
I
Oh
realized
yeah.
the implication of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be bad. Don't do that.
Ask me how I know.
I'm sorry, folks. You'd be stuck with me here by myself.
I was on a live stream with some of the Microsoft folks, and there were like 3,000 people watching, and I killed my browser, like completely killed it, and just bailed out of the room. So yeah, fun stuff. Okay, so I'm back in.
There
Oh
you go.
no! Oh no! Okay, all right,
I'm
I
sorry,
see.
Sam. Access denied.
I have done something bad. Yeah.
So, because the application is only checking in order to show the view that you're logged in, what I did is I did a secondary processing where I checked the role. And if
Hmm.
you are not of the correct role, there are a lot of things I could do, but I thought it'd be fun just to load a different report for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And you'll
Okay.
see that
Oh, you identifies it as a spy.
yes,
I
your
thought
role
we
has
were all
changed.
spies. Okay, okay. So from a reporting perspective, like everybody, like if you roll out a solution like this, everybody in the enterprise, like they will be able to, log in with their, enterprise credentials. Like that's their identity. But then on a reporting basis, you are saying like on a per view, or maybe even like on a per report basis, you can control the role-based access.
Yeah, reporting is super agile in the way it's set up. So there are 1,000 ways I could have built this, but um, what you basically need to do is figure out a way to determine which users you want to be able to access which reports, and then how much security you want to build between that user and that report.
Yeah.
And it could be something simple like that only certain users can choose reports from a drop down, and that's what gets loaded. That's a relatively easy path to follow. And if you have a high level of trust in your users, it's a great way to go. The problem with that ends up being front end client side technologies. Any single page application like Blazor WebAssembly is possible to be exploited because everything is running on the browser UI thread. So a bad actor could get in there and overload those strings and ask the service for super secret
Hmm.
report. And if that's the only security you had was that string name not being known, the report's going to come back and render. But there are a lot of ways you could prevent it. You could do it on the UI thread, you could do it in the controller level, you can do it server side. I chose a relatively middle ground approach. It's easy to demo, easy to show off, but you could
Yeah.
build as many walls as you want between your end user and your report. So you can build it on the front end, you can build it on the server side, you can build it in the data layer. You could bring them all together and say, you may get through this wall, but you're not getting through this next wall.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. Multiple layers and multiple walls is the way to go. Okay, so I get it. Like I was able to see the report. I cannot anymore. I want to see how you're pulling all of this off.
Okay.
So shall we switch to yours so you can show
Yep.
me?
I'll share my screen and we'll start rebuilding the application that I dismantled in order to present. Let's see. Select this. Entire screen. And you should get that.
Yeah,
Here.
normally, I see your desktop. Yeah, are you ready to bring it up?
Yeah, by all means.
Yeah. Yeah, normally whenever we, see such role-based, authorizations, it's complicated to set all of this up, right? So I'm very curious. First up, how your Blazor app is working, because that sounds like just all WASM. Show me the report viewer, how you're
Yep.
rendering it, and then what are you doing to control the rights with the roles?
Okay. So what we're looking at right here is basically the starting point if you follow this document. So
Yep.
this is the .NET 7 Blazor WebAssembly hosted in AAD. So hosted means that this has a complementary ASP.NET Core solution bundled with the standalone Blazor WebAssembly solution. And that's required because reporting has a service layer. You have to have a controller running in order to render the reports. Um, so that is all together in the same solution. It could be separate. Like I said, it's a decoupled SDK. But to make everything easy, you just follow this air quotes easy. Follow this guide through many pages of steps of configuration on both the front end and the back end and AAD. And then once that's done, I went through and I followed the AAD groups and roles document. And again, this is many pages of configuration, but it's
Hmm.
all straightforward. Just take it slowly, one step at a time, and read, very carefully because the logic will branch in here and say, if you want to do this, do this. If you don't want to do that, do this. But when all that is said and done, you end up with something like
I'm
this.
I'm reminded. So this is a very classic, response from some of our some hardcore engineers. Like it's read the damn docs. It's like read through it, pace yourself, read the docs.
I
They're
mean,
there for a
I
reason.
I've said it myself, Sam, and I've written, hundreds of pages of documentation in my life. And, we try and do it, for the benefit of the end users because there are certain pathways that are, they're hard worn and they're known. Um, so it's easy to lay it out in documentation. But this is one I will say, take your time, read it carefully as you're going.
Yeah.
Um,
And but by the way, folks, I don't know if Rick, you see it. I think it's actually, so we are streaming through an app called StreamYard, and I think it's a StreamYard issue actually. So I actually see multiple instances of your mouse as you're moving around, and I've seen like other streams where people have the same thing. So
yeah,
you're
I see.
likely not seeing it.
I see it on my screen that has the copy of your screen. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's interesting.
yeah.
Do
It's
you have
not
any advice
nothing.
to stop that, or
No, no, it's
is
a
it just
StreamYard
gonna?
thing. Yeah, I don't think we
Okay,
can. Yeah.
okay. Well, I assure you, everyone, I only have one mouse pointer. um, okay, so the template gives you 3 projects and 1 solution.
Can
There's
you make
the
things a little bigger? Sorry.
I can try. Let's see. Um,
Maybe Control Plus.
I That will make the code bigger, but I don't think it's actually going to make the
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, that's fine
Visual
then.
Studio elements
Right, right.
larger. Um, so hopefully this is
So you're essentially
viewable.
starting out with a boilerplate Blazor template. That's awesome. So you get the
Yeah.
client, the server, and the shared projects, right?
Yes, and this
Yeah.
is not something that comes in Visual Studio. You have to do this command line, but one of the lines of the documentation is actually the command to generate this project, and you provide it with
Oh,
all of the app IDs and everything that it needs to integrate the front end and back end. Because keep in mind that both this client and the server project are represented by app registrations in AAD. So there's a lot of sort of tying things
hmm,
together with application IDs, client side IDs, server side IDs,
I see.
API scopes and permissions, interlinking, cross linking. Like it really is a multiverse of madness.
Hmm.
Um, but
I
so
hear you. Yeah,
traditional,
and once you do have your code opened, Rick, I think you can use the the percentage sign, yep, to bump that up a little bit more.
let me go to 125.
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
125 is a happy
So,
medium where I can still
mhm,
be
right.
productive and users can
Yep.
still see it.
No, I can read it just fine. So yeah, you're right. The name of the app and the credentials that are tied to it, they matter. And I know this from my side of the story of, doing mobile apps that are going to the app stores. So all of your certificates and everything needs to be married up to the name of the app. And those IDs matter.
Yep, well said. So
So now, is this the same app that I ran in my browser in production?
this is just the shell
Okay.
of that application. This has no reporting stuff in it at all yet. What it does have is the basics of the WebAssembly shell, the basics of the ASP core shell, and it does have the login button. So this will allow for basic user authentication. Um,
Okay.
Authenticated, not authenticated. Those are your states. Um, and you can be, as long as you only have one role, either authenticated or not, you can start building from here. Um, but this is pretty much all we have. And we're going to, in the next hour or so, add in all of the reporting stuff and get it hopefully configured and working and back to the state that we just previewed. Um,
I'm scared for you because this is a lot to configure.
oh, I'm terrified.
Yeah,
We'll see if we get
we'll
there.
see. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see that it's logged in, and uh, one minor change I made is I just added the word agent to the string at the top here.
Of
So
course.
that's added a little more fun. Um, okay, let's close that. So the first thing we want to do is start adding the reporting features. So I am going to so Telerik reporting. Like I said, it's a decoupled solution, and it has a front end, and it has some services that it requires. So I'm going to add the front end first on a single project that would had everything combined, front end and back end in the same project. the Visual Studio template is clever enough to build a report viewer, to build the controller, the service layer, and link them together automatically. Um, because these are separate projects, it doesn't sort of know what's going on in the other side. So we'll have to do some manual stuff. But we'll take advantage of the one easy button I have. We're going to go to now the client is the front end WASM solution. This has our Razor pages, www root, and everything. The server side here that has the suffix server is our .NET Core, ASP.NET Core hosted solution. The bottom one, hosts the top one. Another pro tip, when it comes time to deploy, make sure you deploy the server. The server will take all the other resources with it. But if you accidentally deploy just the client, you'll be in for a lot of frustration, like someone who remained unnamed trying to figure out why your service is not working. And then there's also the shared library here, which is just common resources that are shared between the two. That way you don't have any duplication of code. So we will start with the client, the WebAssembly side. We will hit right click, go to add new item. I already have Telerik reporting installed. That installs the Visual Studio extensions, and Visual Studio extensions come with some quick start templates. So here I'm going to find the Telerik Blazor report viewer native, and we'll leave it the default name and hit add. It's going to launch the template. Now you'll see now create new REST service is grayed out because there is no controller folder. There's no services in this solution. It's going to be separate. I could tie it into an external report server if I wanted, but we're going to be doing it all manually. And it wants to know, as part of the wizard, where is my REST service that I'm going to get my data from? We don't have one yet. So I will just call this and hit next. Now it wants to know the name of a report to initially load. Now these also live in the server with the service, so I don't have one of those yet either. So so you need to fix this too. Next again, we can turn on accessibility from here. Accessibility is important in a lot of applications. For this one, just to cut down on the markup, I'm going to leave it off. But if you wanted to turn on all accessible features of reporting, just all done with this one checkbox. And
Nice.
we'll hit finish. So pretty straightforward. I only had to do one thing. Normally this whole page would be full with stuff that it had to do. But it created that Razor page and we got a log saying that it did that. So just clean that up. And we have this report viewer page.razor. Excuse me. So in this page, we have title, we have the routing, we have the component, the report viewer component, and because this is Blazor, we have some inline code which we can use. This is the basics of a front-end report viewer. So we'll have to update the report source. You can see this is actually just doing a binding on report source. So we'll find that down here. And the report source should point to a report. So we'll have to fix that. And then we also have the service URL, which points to where you'll find the REST service to actually render requested report. And we will also fix that. But for now, we can take the report viewer, we can move it into the pages folder.
Yeah, but I mean, like you were saying, like this is just native Blazor, so the markup and then the code feels very familiar if you're doing anything else with Blazor.
And we'll get IntelliSense and syntax highlighting and all that fun stuff included. And let's see. Okay, so we have our viewer now, and okay, so now we need the other side of the equation. We need to build the controller. And this is where the real fun part is going to happen because there is no unfortunate easy button for this one. So I'm going to be building this controller manually, while the world stares at me. Okay, so you need a couple packages first. So I'm just going to show these. I already have them installed. So you would go to your NuGet package manager, and there are two things you need. You need the Telerik reporting services ASP.NET Core, and you need the Telerik ReportViewer Blazor native. Well, this one will get included automatically when you do the easy button. The ones you'll have to add are the services ASP core, and if you want to do any rendering of reports to XML formats like open office type formats, you'll need the open XML rendering package. These come from the Telerik private package repository, and if you don't have a license for them, you can activate a trial and you'll get the same packages with a trial suffix. So ASP.NET Core.trial. That will do the exact same thing for 30 days. So having those all ready, we can move on to the next step. And full disclosure, to make sure I don't skip any steps, I do actually have our own documentation open on a separate monitor. So I follow my own advice and I read the documentation. There may or may not be an extra word in there sometimes. So let's see. We have the packages we need. Okay. So next thing, we're going to, just so I don't open the wrong folder, the wrong files by mistake, I'm going to just collapse my client because we're working in the server. Open program.cs. And we are going to make sure that we have Newtonsoft JSON added in. Now, depending on your exact version of .NET that you're using, you will either see add controllers with views or just add controllers. So we'll just tack on the add Newtonsoft JSON if you don't already have it.
So is the reporting data being transferred back and forth using JSON?
So the report itself uses JSON serialization internally. So we've built it using the Newtonsoft, and it's not exactly one-to-one mapping yet with Microsoft JSON. So we need the Newtonsoft for the time being. Hopefully, at some point in the future, we'll have that backwards compatibility where we can get rid of this. But for the time being, we'll just tack it on. Okay. Next, let's see, what's the next step? We need a service to actually build the report. So in .NET 7, actually everything from .NET 5 up, we can take advantage of, 6 up, top level statements and minimal APIs. So it makes it a little bit easier to write our code. And I am just copying a code block from the documentation. I am going to paste it here. And this adds a singleton to the builder services. And what this is basically doing is using dependency injection to set up this iReporting configuration service. So it's in here that all of the work would be done for setting up storage and application IDs. And I think from some previous tutorials I did, and maybe again from today, you'll see that this is where you set the report source resolver if you wanted to use a custom report source resolver. If we have time at the end, I'll circle back to this. I don't use it for this demo, but it's something you could use to add a third layer of security if you wanted to.
And you said this was pretty much copy paste from the ReportViewer documentation.
It is. This is copy paste from the hosting in .NET 6 Plus with top level statements documentation. I will include a link to that blog as well, on the documentation page. Okay, so we have the builder service. Now, there's actually a tiny error in our documentation that I noticed. Until I get it patched, the audience is going to be in on a little secret. So the next step in the documentation says to include this. App use endpoints, and then you map endpoints to the map controllers, right? This is something that we've always done in .NET Core, but you'll see we're getting a little complaint from Visual Studio. It's saying, I don't understand why you're doing this. And the reason is because we're using top-level statements. So we can actually do this a different way. So instead of having to use endpoints, use the app use endpoints extension and then map controllers to those endpoints, we can actually do something much easier. All we have to do is app dot app controllers. So basically the same thing we have here. And actually looks like I already have that down here because that came along with the identity template for the controllers. So we can actually just leave this off altogether. So heard it here first, folks. You can skip step 3 using minimal APIs, top level statements. Okay. Now, the next entire section of the documentation is dedicated to building a app settings JSON, a custom app settings JSON called reporting app settings.json. So we have our built-in app settings here, and by default, you would put any of your Telerik specific connection strings or other set app settings in here. You can see that I have one that I used earlier, just pointing to my local SQL Express for AdventureWorks because I have that connection string embedded in a test report, which I used during my initial setup. So this would have been the connection string name, and this is what it resolves to, and it has to go into an app setting somewhere. Now, for larger scalable solutions, you probably want to have a dedicated reporting app settings file and then put all of your settings there. If you want to do that, the entire next section of the documentation explains how to set that file up and how to reconfigure reporting to get its settings from there. We are going to skip that for brevity, and we're actually not even using the one app setting I have in there for this solution, so we're moving on.
Yeah,
So now,
and I think I mean, if you're going to put this on Azure, there are ways to make those settings like Azure secrets. So you're actually not, checking in this code anywhere. And it's just being read as, configuration while your app is starting up.
yes, that is another way to do it too. I have not explored setting it up for reporting yet, but maybe that'll be a topic of a future video. Okay, so next thing we need to do is add the reporting controller. So we have a controllers folder already. If you didn't, you would just create one in the solution, right click, add new controller. And you have your option of controllers to add. It wants to add an MVC controller. We're actually going to go to API and add an empty API controller. And hit add, and we're going to call it controller and add. Okay, and we get the basics of a report controller here. And again, I'm going to go into the documentation and I'm going to copy out the sample controller code. Let's see. So this is the reports controller. This is the endpoint that actually does all of the rendering. And normally in older solutions of reporting, you may have seen in some older videos that I've done, the reports controller would be much larger because there would be all kinds of configuration in here. You would have your resolve statement in here. You would do all of your overloading in here for any customizations. Not anymore. Now this is using dependency injection. You just have the reports controller, and then you're getting the reporting service configuration we set up in the program.cs, and it's being used here. If you try and do this the old way, you're going to get a compiler warning that says this is now obsolete. Update your code. So pretty simple reports controller. And I don't think we actually need to touch this anymore because all the configuration is done in the program CS location. Okay.
Rick, keep working. I'm just going to take a second to just stretch my back. I'm getting old.
I don't believe it for a second, Sam.
I'll be right here for a second.
Sure. I'm going to just do a test build on this because we actually have enough infrastructure now that it is worthy of a test. To build, to succeeded. Okay. So we're going to hit run.
I'm back.
Hi, Sam. we are doing our first test.
Mm-hmm.
So
It built. It's trying to
yes,
launch.
both projects built amazingly.
There you
Okay,
go.
so well, this always worked. What I want to test now is the back end infrastructure. So I have that service that I created. So what I want to do is I want to bang on that a little bit. So I'm just going to go to API/reports or slash. So what this should do, yes, this is reaching out to that API and it's saying, give me all of the formats that are available for rendering. So this is the same API that our report viewer would hit when it wants to populate the export report dropdown. It hits this API and says, okay, what rendering formats are you, the report rendering service, allowing the end user access to? And it gets this collection here, and you can see these are so PDF, XLSX, image, Word, basically all of them, and that populates the dropdown in the front end report viewer. But it also serves as a sanity check for me to know that the API is online. And there's one more you can use. I believe that is version. And if I ever learn how to spell Sam, we will
So is this the same? Oh, there
get
you
the
go. Yeah.
version.
Is this the same RESTful endpoint that the report will use to fetch its
Yes.
data? Okay.
Yep. This is the same endpoint that the report is going to use. These are just a couple different methods that I know don't require parameterization and are really simple to test in the browser. But so now I know that the endpoint is working. I tested it two different ways. And okay, so we now have one more piece of information. We know where the endpoint is. So let's go to um, back to the client and open the pages and report viewer. And now we can populate the service URL. So here's the host, and we know it's API slash. Okay. Now there's a reports folder um, that exists. You can see that here, where I have the reports the application was using. Now, normally you would design these in the um, report designer, standalone report designer, save them as these report formats: TRDP, Telerik reporting, definition package, basically a zip file that contains an XML serialization of the report document. Um, and then drop those into a convenient location somewhere that the server or the service has access to. This being a folder under that project, it has implicit access. So that makes it easy to work with. So we can also come down to our report options configuration and we can load a report. And let's just use the denied report for now.
Yeah, so you're today you're kind of showing the flip side. Like, I mean, in the past, like Rick and me have spent a lot of time on the report designing itself. Like that's a beautiful thing. You can do this inside of Visual Studio. You can do it on a standalone. You can also now do it completely on the web. Giving your users the access to be able to design their own reports. But once you're done with your report, this is the end result. You get like a report definition file, and now you're essentially trying to control access to those reports through this app.
Absolutely. So, report design, we've always intended to be something that's available to end users. Perhaps slight power users would say in MS Excel, level of programming ability. Uh, that is something that's available to everybody. What we're doing here and today, we are firmly entrenched in developer land. Okay, so we should have that set up to access a report. And let me see.
Maybe it's questionable how many Spectre agents should have report designing capabilities or rights.
um, Oh, and we need to be able to access the report viewer page in some way. I believe that's the shared folder here and app nav. Yeah. Look, look, Sam. Someone left me a navigation item conveniently coded out, commented out. Okay, let's try this one more time, and we should have the
This,
basics of a reporting application.
I was going to say, like, this is nothing. You just left yourself a little nav link. Well, when you look at some of the big keynotes that tech companies do, like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and they'll just turn on a few lines of code and it'll do amazing things. There's a lot more to it.
Okay, so this is working. So the application is now technically complete, but you can see I'm not even logged in. It's not doing any permission checking or anything. But as far as the reporting is concerned, we have a fully built reporting
Yeah.
solution with the front end and the back end and the middleware. So that part is done. So let's try and wire it up now. So there was a lot of stuff uh, that I added. So basically, I did all of the magic here in this Razor page, and this is what I was talking about before. Is there are lots of places you can build walls in these solutions. I decided to do it around the view, which for probably 99.9% of people in the world is perfectly fine. Maybe the most elite of the Spectra agents knows how to get into the DOM and manipulate things. For those people, you would want to add a second level of security here in the reports controller or in the dependency injection area by building a custom resolver. This is something that is compiled in a DLL. It lives on a server. No one is getting access to it. So whatever logic you put into here is set in stone. Um, the Razor page, uh, honestly, I'm not even sure how it's exploitable, but I have been assured that it is. It has a slightly larger attack surface. I think it requires decompilation of resources and then modification and then sort of injection. So not easy to do, but possible. But for our purposes, this is where we'll do the majority of our work today. So first thing I want to do is change the page title. Top secret report viewer. Now, we are going to, if you remember, Sam, when we first logged in, we couldn't even see the report viewer, right? You had to be authenticated to even see what was going on the page. So we do that with a authorized view.
Is that a Blazor thing?
I believe this is part of the I authorization services, so more of a
Uh,
.NET thing.
oh, I have not used this specific thing.
And we will just put that authorized view tag around the section. Okay. And now you can say for authorized, show this. I'm going to fix it.
Oh, this is pretty nice actually, because you could say if you're authorized, you see this. If not, you see that.
Exactly. So yeah, now we're going to go down here and we're going to say not authorized. The great thing about this is it's just so intuitive to read. I mean, you can look at it and just know implicitly, what's going on. You don't. I accidentally used some kind of cheat code. You don't.
You didn't even know you had those code snippets.
I know. Okay, so that should.
I
Okay.
think you meant to say belong. That's a
Uh,
nice not authorized
you,
access. You don't belong, like just flat out in your face. Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so let's test this. I'm a big proponent of testing as you go. So we shouldn't be able to see anything in the view unless you're logged in. This
Well,
is sort of that
okay, yep.
first wall of security. This is just
Huh.
going to make sure the user is logged in.
If you end up, accidentally getting through somehow, you just don't belong. I love it.
And like I said, there's a million ways you can add additional layers of security. So that nav link here, I could check and see if you're
Sure.
logged in
And not even
before
show
this is
it.
viewable,
Right.
So
Right.
you wouldn't even be able to navigate to the page. But you
There
don't
you go.
belong here. So let's try logging in.
There you go. Huh.
And if I go back, okay. So now we're loading the view. We are
Sure.
loading the report. I am logged in, so I have access to the API. So everything is good. So
Yes.
okay. So now we need to find a way to load a different report based on user role, and this is where the fun happens. So what I am going to do is it's great that we have the code and the markup in the same page. This really makes it easy to go back and forth. Um, let's see.
Yeah, uh,
Or
it does. I have also seen, again, I'm an old man, so I have memories of scary things,
hmm,
like doing things from like ASP spaghetti days before .NET was a thing. Like I normally, once your file starts getting a little big on a Razor file, it might make sense to just separate that out as a code behind, so your markup and your code are not all together.
it's a good pro tip. I think we're keeping things small enough and tight enough
No,
in this
no,
one
no.
that we
This
can
is
just keep it
this
all
is
together.
great. Yeah, yeah.
I want to inject the I authorization service into this view. It gives me access to some um, additional properties and extensions I can use. And let's see, what am I going to do? So what I need to do is control the binding of report source. So that is going to, let's see. Okay, so report source. So what we're doing here is we're just doing a very basic uh, report source, get set, and we're doing a default initialization of the report. So this is sort of out of the box how it's done. Um, we need to do something a little more fancy. So we're going to need let's see. So this was the tricky part. So this one, okay, so we need this initially. So the report viewer insists on there being a report source when it initializes. So we're going to initialize to a blank report so we don't get an ugly error on the page. I'm working with the reporting team to get this logic changed a little bit. I personally believe you shouldn't need to supply a report source, and the engineers agree with me. So we'll be making some updates to the library in a future release. But for today, if you want to prevent an error that says no report source, give it a blank report. So okay, so that's the initial rendering. And let's see. We need, what did I use that for? I have my notes here on a separate screen, so I'm also just trying to remember how I built this over the course of many back and forth coding
No, no,
sessions.
I don't blame you because this is very complicated. And then
Um,
kudos for even trying to do this all together.
report source value. Okay, so I need need a little more control over setting report source options because we need to override that at runtime. And where did oh, I see. Okay. So so what I did is I took the built-in public um, the built-in public getter setter with inline initialization, and I basically just reverted back to a pre C sharp 5 basic private backing field because I need a little more control over getting and setting those variables. So that was basically undoing a lot of great engineering by um, some Microsoft engineers, and we now that we have I injected the authentication service. So what we want to do is we had a we had a little helper tag at the top in the authorized. So this will identify um, the authorized user. So you are authorized as, and we have a variable which will create user app role and a button. And actually, there was one improvement I remember that I wanted to make. So let me just open this, and I'm going to steal these Bootstrap classes from a different. Doing it live, Sam. Okay, so I need a role now to back. Let me see. Was it? What was the markup for that? It was prop tab, right? Property. There we go. I like doing this when I remember. String and app role. Okay. That should not be complaining anymore. Why are you unhappy? Well, let's see. Oh, okay. It's unhappy about something else. I probably need to add the validate user. This one I am just going to copy from another. And yeah, that's right. I need a cascading parameter. We'll put that. Okay.
Okay, what is a cascading parameter?
Cascading parameter basically allows a parameter value to cascade from a parent component to a child component. Um, I'm not entirely certain if it's needed in this context, but this was the way it was done in the Microsoft documentation, um, and I haven't experimented with it enough to determine whether or not it would work otherwise.
That's fair.
Okay, so I have the private task authentication state, and so what this is doing is you log in and oh, good. It was just that I didn't have that method. Okay. When you log in, you're authenticated. Authenticated users can see the report viewer. They can see this initial line, and they can see the button here, which on click goes to validate user. That was our load top secret button. You remember that one, Sam? So load user comes down and uh, to here, and then we have a task for authentication states, basic getter setter. It's asynchronous, so that will in here. Um, if authentication state isn't null, where does authentication services? Where does that get initialized? I think it gets initialized as part of the injection. So, okay, yeah. So if you're authenticated, you inject the authentication services, and then you can check that if the authentication state isn't null, you get the here it is. Oh wait, I missed the wait on the so you get the authentication state and store that in auth state. You then grab the user from auth state, and then you check and you see if user is null. So basically, all this is doing is making sure that you're logged in and you're authenticated. You have an authentication state, and all of it is not null. Okay, now this is the code that goes through the claims. Now, the claims principal has something like 70 something claims in this build because of the user roles. I think I mentioned that before. Um, it goes through the claims and it finds the first role of type app role. And please don't give me heck for the magic string, Sam. I know how much you hate them, but I built this in a fury. Um,
You're good.
so
I mean, once you have it, it's easy to
yeah.
refactor and put things behind constants.
No, I know. Okay, so we have the app role, which is the type of role in the claims. So it'll find that specific claim, and then it will load the user app role from that value or an empty string if that claim is null for whatever reason. Now all of this, the user app role, these whole two lines. I mentioned we did things two ways earlier. All that's doing is populating our fun string here at the top. To show that you are authenticated as that role. Normally, you don't need to do the work of going through all of the claims and the claims principal identity in order to find it and then do a string comparison. That's actually not um, not very secure for any type of things that requires a check, and it's not best practice. But that is only for fun. That's the only place I use that is for that fun string. So it's fine. And I wanted to show one way you could get that value too. Because surprisingly, these two lines weren't trivial. It took me a couple tries to get it working. The right check is user is in role. This actually is checking in a more secure way that the user has an app role of um, secret agent man, which is what we're checking for. Usually, this would be something like admin or read write, something like that. Ours is secret agent man. Now, if it finds that the user is of the role secret agent man, they get the report source for agent locations. Anything
Oh,
else,
so you're just swapping out the report source based on.
I'm exactly. I'm just swapping the
I
report
see.
source based on the whether or not the user is in the correct role. So that's why initially we load a blank report. You hit the button up here. Button goes to validate user. Validate user loads the authentication state, make sure that nothing is null, gets the user, make sure the user isn't null, and then once it gets through all of that, if the user is in that role, it will update the report. If they're in any other role, access denied. So to even get the access denied, you have to be logged in. So it's not that you're not authenticated; it's just you're not a member of the correct role to view this report.
Yeah. Hey, quick question. Maybe this is, just me shooting out this thing, like report source options. So, is the first parameter always just the you know pointer to the report definition file, or could it be anything else?
So report source options is basically just a collection that defines the report source for
Yeah,
a report. So
I
the
see.
report source is just a collection of resources. So in this case, a string indicating a source and a dictionary indicating parameters. Um,
Yeah. So
th-
here's the reason why I was asking. Like, let's say you are a secret agent man, and then
yep.
you have access to not just one, but maybe all of the reports that are in a certain folder.
Mhm.
So maybe if this API could be tweaked in future, maybe we can offer it up as a folder that you can get access to these 5 reports
Of
because you have
course.
those special roles. Yeah.
So there are lots of ways to do that. So you could have an endpoint that only loads reports given a specific role. So
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
what I would do is I would probably populate a drop down, and
Hmm.
I would just have a drop down here on this page, and it would say something along the lines of populate available reports. Then on the server side, I would be checking the role, deciding which reports the user in that role gets, and then sending back a JSON package of effectively these strings, for reports that are in that role that would populate a dropdown. Then the user could select the report and it would render. That's as secure as what we're doing here. For a second layer of security, I would then do a second check when they actually request the report and say, you are really supposed to have this report, right? And do a second check at that point, because again, you can always change what's being sent in a packet, and this is just sent. I mean, usually it's sent over secure connection, but um, that's only helps for a man in the middle attack.
Right.
If the bad actor is at the origin, then they could always update the string to whatever they want. So
Sure.
you want checks on your checks,
Hmm.
and I think I'm gonna cross my fingers, but I think we might have gotten back to where we started. Let me try a quick build.
No
You
pressure.
succeeded.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try running it. There's always a bit of a
Okay.
lag debugging Blazor. I haven't quite figured that one out. Okay, don't belong. Log in.
There you go. Now
What
you are that
what
agent.
role do I
So
have? Did I give myself? I don't even
yeah,
know.
that's what I was going to ask. Like, what are you?
Let's see. Okay. So it's loading the blank report, so you can see it.
Right.
If I didn't have anything in here, there would be a big ugly red warning at the top that says
Right.
report parameters have not been correctly initialized, something along those lines. Um, we're improving it. The native the native Blaze report viewer is brand new. We'll fix that part. Um, okay, let's hit the button. I am a secret agent man,
Ah, so you should
and
get the report. Yay! Look at that.
it works. So
Look at that.
we
Well
have
done.
we have successfully recreated the wheel after learning exactly how to create a wheel step by step ahead of time.
No, I can see like the number of steps and the complexity. Like those 2 lines that you said or that you showed where you are looking through the claims. That's
Mhm,
not easy. So you're doing a first or default, making sure that somebody does have the app role,
mhm.
and then you checking the claims in the app role, making sure those are not null or empty, and
Yep.
then you're checking if the user has that role.
Yeah, and that by the
Yeah.
time you get to here, you already know that you're authenticated, because it's not
Right.
null, and there's a user because that is also not null, so that you know that there's at
Right.
least a logged in user.
Sure.
Now
Sure.
you're
Sure.
going through the claims to see, can I find a claim called app role? That's not given. I There's a lot of configuration behind the scenes to make app roles work. It's all done via this custom account factory and custom user accounts. So you can see here we have the roles um, set up, um, and we're not actually using any of that stuff, but we just use roles. And then the custom account factory. This is the code I was talking about that I got from Microsoft that only works for Microsoft Graph version 4, the latest version 4. If you just go to NuGet and grab get latest, it's going to give you version 5. This does not work. There were a lot of changes. Um, but you can see in here, we're finding the roles and we're adding the claims, to app role in the custom account factory. And there's a ton of configuration that went into the program.cs in the demo where you have to figure out let's see. Oh, here it is. The add the MCell authentication, and you're adding the scopes and default access tokens and user
Oh boy.
options
Yeah.
and role claims. Um, I don't know if these GUIDs are supposed to be confidential or not, but this is all getting ripped down off of Azure in 10 minutes after the session's over anyway. So there's nothing secret in here. Uh, Once I
Hmm.
clean up this solution and take out the proprietary bits, I plan on posting the whole thing to GitHub. So we'll make it
Yeah.
available for anyone who wants to try recreating this insanity.
Yeah, because
And
I'm guessing like this is a use case a lot of our customers and developers might run into. Like you have all of your reporting set up, you're done with your due diligence of designing reports and configuring them right, but then it comes come delivery, you want to have authorization
yeah,
as to who gets what.
and I would like to build in secondary authorization into the reports controller. I sort of ran out of time for that one, and I think that adds another layer of complexity we probably didn't
Yeah.
need to get into for this session. But once I figure that out, maybe we'll come back and we'll talk about how to build a second wall on the server side.
Oh, and this maybe brings up another interesting idea. What if like this has been all customized for Azure and
Correct.
the GraphQL user roles and the claims? What if you are writing a Blazor app and you want to embed ReportViewer? However, your organization decides that you want to go to Google or Apple or Facebook for authentication. So, how much of this can be abstracted out and reused as code, and then just switching up the provider?
That is a great question, Sam. that
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to.
I'm
Um,
sure it's digging through another spiral of understanding how Google or Facebook does things.
the parts that are going to remain the same are some semblance of something like this.
Right. Yeah.
um, Something that checks the role and then sets the report source based on that. Everything else is going to change as far as the services that you need, the interfaces you need to implement, um, how the roles are handled. And we could probably repeat this exact same exercise, 5 times using different type of authorization and identification services.
Yeah.
Um, in um, Blazor and WebAssembly and single page applications, Microsoft has some recommendations for um, a third party authentication service. The name is escaping me at the moment. I didn't use it for this because I was using the ASP.NET Core hosted model, which allowed me to tie into Azure Active Directory. So, I mean,
And in all fairness, like anybody who's doing a .NET backend is likely already in the Microsoft ecosystem doing Azure and doing
yeah,
ASP.NET authorizations.
yeah, and there are free tiers to a lot of the stuff that in fact, this entire app is being hosted in a free tier. I have advantage of the fact that Progress has an enterprise account in some of the portal tooling. It was a little easier for me, but this is all possible in the free tier of Azure as well.
Yeah. Yes, you should definitely write this up if you can, or just put some source code up, because I'm guessing this is going to be you know, fairly in high demand as more and more folks try to control access to reports.
Yeah, definitely. And
Yeah.
let's see, we're pretty much at time, right? So I
Yeah.
probably shouldn't add anything on to this point.
No, I mean this was great that you rebuilt this whole thing from scratch. Yeah, I can imagine. the struggles when you're doing it for the first time.
From
Yeah,
a well, from scratch with a clearly planned and documented pathway laid out ahead of me, and a very solid foundation that was pre-built and hardened.
yeah, yeah. I
I mean,
can
I really
imagine.
just came. Someone else built the building. I just came along and I threw a coat of paint on it.
This was good. This is very, very good. Yeah.
But yeah, I think this went well. There was no crash and burn. So
Yeah, and like I said, like our reporting team would be very interested in how we enable developers to do this for their reports and controlling access to them. So yeah, we should do something with it now that you have built it.
yeah, and there are so many ways, like I said, to implement all of these things. I mean, and even just I think I don't even think I never even locked down the reports controller, but I think all you have to do is come in here and um, add a decoration for authorized. Oh, I had to be logged in to hit the controller endpoint.
Right.
How much easier can Microsoft have made this for me? I mean,
Yeah, a lot of things are very intuitive, like especially like what views you're seeing, and certain controller endpoints being authorized or not. So that's all makes a lot of sense. It's just when you dig through the tokens and and the user roles, that's when things are you know
yeah,
very clear.
that was the hardest part. I think I told you when we were planning this call, Sam, setting up the entire connection to the Azure Active Directory instance to the tenant, uh, and building the basic of the application took maybe an hour or two, just as I was going through the documentation. Adding the roles and getting that part working was
Yeah.
a solid 20 hours. The
Wow.
first time I ever did it, over the course of a couple of days. And, you know, now that I've done it once, I could probably do the whole thing again in under an hour. It was just, I didn't read the documentation closely enough and I missed a very key step that led to a lot of frustration.
Yeah. And you can help out a lot more of our enterprise customers because like Rick and the team, they do an amazing job actually implementing solutions for our customers, and this would be something a lot of enterprise customers will look for.
Good to
So
hear.
now, yeah, now you can go tell them, read the damn docs.
The docs are
All
there
right.
for a reason.
Yeah. All right.
Should
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Rick. If nothing else, I will bring your desktop down.
There's so much more, but I mean, I feel like we're probably overloaded the audience at this point. So
No, no,
we'll
it's
we'll,
been all good. Easy,
we'll put
easy
a
to
pin in it.
follow. Yeah, yeah.
We'll,
Once you start explaining it, since you've done it, like it's easy to follow. But yeah, it's a lot.
we have a good test bed now, so we like I said, we can work on some new features. We can maybe find some optimizations and build some more walls and show later how to do that. I would love to find out the exact technique for exploiting this supposedly exploitable surface because I tried and I could not even find a semblance of a string in any of the DOM that I could mess
Mm.
around with. So I'm not sure where the caution comes from. Um, but in principle, I understand it's all on the UI thread. It's all available there. But I think the steps to
Yeah,
exploit it would be, state actor, level.
yeah, and maybe we don't even know that kind of sophistication because like this is a WASM app that you're talking about. So yes, on theory, a lot of things are client side, but like how you poke around that's pen testing, and like that's a whole other beast to get into.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't figure it out. So I mean,
So your app is good.
clearly it's not possible.
Very good. All right, Rick,
Okay.
thank you so much, for
Of course.
taking, days and days to build this up and then just recreating all of it in an hour.
No,
So
it
this
was
has been
fun.
great. Yeah.
It was fun.
And
I always look for an excuse to try something new.
yeah, always. And that's how you push the, envelope. And Napalm and everybody else in the chat room, thanks for hanging with us. This has been a Thursday. This has been a .NET Dev Show. Unless I'm traveling, I try to get on most Thursdays. Although I know I in the last couple of months, it's not been every Thursday at all. Like next week, I'll be at an event, so I can't do a Thursday. But whenever I'm home, I try to get on, and Rick helps me out when he's got cool things to show. So, all right, it's been a minute, folks, and thank you so much. I think that's the stream. That's the stream. So, Rick, thank you again so much, and hopefully, folks have a great rest of your day. Go build some cool things and have fun. Be
Thanks for having
productive.
me, Sam.
Yeah, be well. All right, folks, that's it from us. We'll see you on the next stream. Okay, bye now.